Hey everyone, it's Shotzi for the Rough Cuts. It's been a while since I have done a documentary on here, so today I'm going to talk about The Act of Killing. This is directed by Josh Oppenheimer, who is an American director, but he's been living in London for quite some time. And for this particular documentary, he traveled over to Indonesia, where he stayed over a period of, I believe, 8 years doing another documentary, which then led to this particular one. Now, he began by doing a documentary on the exploitation of oil palm plantation workers in Indonesia who were being exploited by the Belgians. And they were trying to form a union, but many of them were afraid to. And when delving into why they were so afraid to form a union, that's when he learned about the Indonesian genocide that took place in 1965, where anywhere between a minimum of 500,000 people and possibly over 1.2 million people were massacred. And these were mainly ethnic Chinese as well as union workers, anyone who's believed to be a communist. Even if they denied being a communist, they were massacred. And so when he was learning about this, that's what inspired him to do a documentary on it. He wanted to talk to the survivors for the documentary, but they were still afraid, even though it's nearly 50 years later on. And so the survivors themselves suggested that he should interview the perpetrators. These were the men who led the death squads, because even today they're very boastful about what they had done. They say that what they did was justifiable, and they're not afraid to talk about it. So that's what brings us into the act of killing. Now, this particular documentary focuses mainly on two death squad leaders in particular, although several are interviewed. But the two main ones are very good friends to each other, Anwar Congo and Herman Koto. Anwar Kondo, he's kind of soft-spoken, skinny man, nondescript. If you were to see him, you wouldn't think much of him. But he is extremely feared where he is because he personally killed, his estimate is over 1,000 people, and that wouldn't seem too far off. And he's pretty much seen as kind of a celebrity over where he is. Herman Koto, he was the leader of one of the paramilitary groups and also a death squad leader, very charismatic. And Joshua Oppenheimer, he was trying to understand their justification in this and wanted to see what their point of view was when describing what they had done. And so then that's when they decided to make a movie about their vision of their past. And so when you see the trailer for this, you'll see scenes from this movie, which was only shot for the act of killing. It's not a separate thing at all. It's all part of this documentary. And they're just very, very ornate sets, like musical numbers with dancing, and they see themselves as heroes. And people call them gangsters. And they emphasize a lot on how gangsters come from the term free man. And so they would always say that together, gangsters and free man. Like they were synonymous with each other. And they said everyone wants to be free. And the song Born Free is one that they used in this. And, you know, it's really outrageous how they see themselves as heroes because they massacred all of these people. And even on a talk show that Anwar Congo went on, the host was mentioning to him how it was so wonderful he was able to find this efficient and humane way of killing all of these people. But the fear of the survivors and some of the other people that weren't even alive at the time, it's very evident. You can see it in the documentary. They've been living off this power of fear over the last half century. Now, during a Q&A after the screening that I saw with Josh Oppenheimer, he was mentioning how in Indonesia it got more laughs than any other audience, because there are very light moments in this film, especially with Herman Koto, because they have him dressed up as a woman through much of their movie scenes that they're doing, and just very, very ornate costumes. Like in the trailer, you'll see him in this turquoise dress. That was one of the more toned down costumes, because he's in some pretty funky stuff. Anwar Congo, he was talking about how in a movie, if you're watching something that's just really sadistic, it can't all be sadistic. You have to have lighter moments in there. Otherwise, you start to lose people. And he talked a whole lot about movies, because when the whole genocide started to begin, he was what was known as a movie gangster. So he would be scalping tickets outside of movie theaters. And when the communist regime came in, they said, no more Hollywood movies. So because there weren't any more Hollywood movies, that means that patrons weren't coming, so they weren't getting any money. And it was gangster movies that gave them all of these different ideas of how to efficiently kill people. One of the things that came out in this documentary is how many of the death squad leaders said that they flat out lied to the people in regard to what the communists did. So what they were doing, what they were saying, they would lie about it to put them in the absolute worst light in order to justify the extermination of the communists. Josh Oppenheimer said that this documentary kind of serves a purpose of like the child or the emperor's new clothes, and saying, this is what you have done, this is what you are, you need to own up to it and just say, yes, I did this, yes, it was wrong, and not try to justify it. So this is a very good documentary, but it's very, very disturbing. It has light moments, but it's very dark. Because, like I said before, they're death squad leaders. They killed hundreds of thousands of people. And Anwar Congo is actually the 41st perpetrator that Josh Oppenheimer interviewed for this documentary. And when you see the credits for this, you'll see that there is still a whole lot of fear within people that are living in Indonesia. And this doesn't glorify the perpetrators in any way. It shows what they did. It talks about what they did and how it isn't something to be proud of. It also exposes a whole lot of the corruption that's very prevalent within Indonesia. This is definitely something that people should watch, because it is the truth about the history of Indonesia and the truth that's now being told by the perpetrators that before they were just flat out denying and suppressing. And this has been shown in Indonesia in over 95 cities, more than 500 screenings, and now more and more journalists over there are coming out talking about the genocide, where before it was never discussed, even though everyone knew about it. This is a very important documentary, one that you should see. It isn't really something to enjoy. Highly disturbing, but very good. The Act of Killing. This will be opening in more and more cities within this month. Next time I'll be talking about something considerably lighter in order to kind of balance out this very, very dark mood right now. But something that you should see. The Act of Killing. Go check it out. I will see you next time. Until then, goodbye.